The war between the US and Iran has reached a new and most terrifying stage yet. For the 10th night in a row, American aircraft have been relentlessly bombing Iran, and analysts are already calling what's happening a return to full-scale air warfare. As US President Donald Trump stated, America will continue to deliver devastating strikes against Iran to make them pay for violating the peace agreement and for the deaths of American servicemen. Trump, in a fit of rage, promised that Iran would pay many times over and ordered even fiercer strikes. On the other side of the region, Iran's allies, the Yemeni Houthis, have nevertheless declared a naval blockade in the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait. However, for now, it's only a blockade against Saudi Arabia. Well, they've effectively closed another key strait, but this is already a disaster. The price of gasoline in the US has already jumped to $4 per gallon, and oil has almost reached the $90 per barrel mark. Meanwhile, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has officially and publicly acknowledged that his country is waging a full-scale war against the US, and that's why in this episode we'll break everything down step by step. What made Donald Trump return to large-scale strikes? How exactly did the American soldiers die? What does the blockade announced by the Houthis mean? So, where is all this heading? Because according to negotiators, diplomacy is practically dead, and there isn't the slightest chance of reaching any kind of agreement. For example, the Iranian authorities have publicly stated that they will not back down on the issue of the Strait of Hormuz, so now a victory for one side is needed, there's no other way. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like this episode, and leave a comment below this video. So, I'll start with tragic news for the United States of America. In Jordan, during Iran's strike, American soldiers were killed. Donald Trump will take part in the ceremony to receive the bodies of American servicemen who died during military operations in the Middle East. The ceremony will take place today at Dover Air Force Base. Trump has already stated that the US will continue to deliver devastating strikes against Iran to make them pay for their violations, for violating the peace agreement and for the deaths of American service members. But before moving on to the main part of this episode, I'll briefly remind you of the context. A few weeks ago, the US and Iran signed a ceasefire memorandum which briefly managed to stop the war. But then Iran started attacking ships in the Hormuz Strait, Trump declared the truce over, and the strikes resumed. The key turning point happened this weekend. Iranian missiles hit American military bases in Jordan, resulting in the deaths of 3 US service members. These are the first American combat losses from Iranian fire in the past several months. This was the very red line that Donald Trump personally drew. As reported today by the Wall Street Journal, back at the beginning of last month, before the Memorandum of Understanding was signed, Donald Trump admitted in private conversations with his aides that if Iran killed even a single American soldier, he would be ready to break the truce and return to full-scale war. And now Iran has crossed that red line. Trump's reaction was immediate and furious. He stated that Iran would pay many times over for the killing of American soldiers and warned that further losses are still likely because he is ready to escalate the war now. After that, the US Central Command reported on another series of strikes, and here is the military's wording. The strikes were carried out to further undermine Iran's ability to threaten commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and to swiftly punish the forces of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps who attacked American troops in Jordan. I should note, this was already the 10th night of such attacks. American losses are mounting. And now Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell officially stated that starting from July 7, almost 100 American servicemen have been wounded to varying degrees, although 96 of them returned to duty the same day. CNN describes what is happening as a return to full-scale air war after the 10th consecutive night of American airstrikes and asks the main question, to which the White House still has no answer: what is all this for anyway? Or rather, what are all of them for? Trump believes that this tactic will work now, even though it didn't work in the spring. The publication notes that the administration still hasn't explained what the ultimate goal of this war is, whether it's simply to knock out the Iranian assets that Tehran is using to attack ships in the Strait of Hormuz, or if it's laying the groundwork for larger-scale actions up to and including a ground operation, which, by the way, we discussed in one of our previous episodes. The reason why Trump has resumed the bombing is very simple. He can't come to terms with the fact that Iran has actually achieved a major victory and established a stranglehold over the Strait of Hormuz. The personal, political, and economic costs of this for Donald Trump are simply unbearable, and it really hurts his ego. At this time, the Iranian authorities stated that they would never back down on the issue of the Strait of Hormuz. The Deputy Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Bagheri Khani, stated that charging a fee for passage through the Strait of Hormuz is a critically important issue for Iran, and that Iran does not plan to make any concessions in this regard. According to him, all US statements about allegedly being able to ensure the security of the strait on their own do not correspond to reality, and that shipping in the Strait of Hormuz cannot be resumed without consent. To be continued. Now, the latest news about how Iran is responding, because its response has gone far beyond anything we've seen before. As I already said, they have crossed the red line, but not only by killing American servicemen. If before Tehran mainly targeted military facilities and bases, now it is striking at the life support systems of entire countries. Iran has started striking desalination plants in countries allied with the US in the Middle East. This is fundamentally important because for the monarchies of the Persian Gulf, desalination of seawater is literally the source of drinking water and the source of life itself. For example, in Kuwait, 90% of drinking water comes specifically from desalination plants. And Kuwait was the one that reported Iranian attacks on water supply facilities and power plants, as well as on oil facilities. Bahrain stated that Iran attacked civilian infrastructure. According to current data, Iran has struck Kuwait, Bahrain, and also Jordan over the past 3 days. American troops are stationed in all of these countries. In Jordan, including the capital Amman, sirens sounded and air defense systems shot down Iranian missiles. The Iranian Foreign Ministry, through BGI, stated that Tehran will continue to respond firmly and does not plan to negotiate with the Americans under any conditions, at least not in the near future. Iran also reported explosions on 2 tankers in the Hormuz Strait. That is, Tehran continues to attack commercial vessels, trying to establish control over the entire passage. Over the past 24 hours, according to the Marine Traffic Vessel Tracking Service, only 9 ships have passed through the Hormuz Strait. For comparison, 5 months ago, that is, before Donald Trump's war against Iran began, an average of 130 to 150 such ships passed through this strait daily. So basically, the Hormuz Strait is essentially paralyzed. In addition, Iran has indeed taken a more serious step toward escalation, although it is still trying to contain the escalation itself. While Iran is choking the Hormuz Strait, its allies, the Yemeni Houthis, have declared a naval blockade of Saudi Arabia in the very same Red Sea. This is exactly what all global players were afraid of. Let me explain why this is important. The Houthis are a movement in Yemen, officially called Ansar Allah, and this movement is fully funded and supported by Iran. They control the north of the country, the north of Yemen, and are located right on the shores of the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait, the second key maritime choke point in the region, which is the entrance to the Red Sea. So now both main oil routes are under threat. Iran is choking the Strait of Hormuz, and its Yemeni allies are choking the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait. Saudi Arabia has already responded harshly. The coalition, led by the kingdom in Yemen, has stated that it will respond with force to Houthi threats against ships and has begun implementing security measures for its vessels passing through the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait. The head of the internationally recognized Presidential Leadership Council of Yemen, Rashad al-Alimi, stated that his government will begin resuming oil exports on July 20th. Previously, the Houthis had completely blocked Yemen's oil exports, but now, as the 21st has already arrived, this has not happened yet. And now a situation is developing that threatens a global energy shock. Two straits, the Hormuz and Bab-el-Mandeb, through which a huge portion of the world's oil passes. If you add it up, it's 32%. So all these passages end up being controlled by Iran and its allies at the same time. That's why all eyes are now on Saudi Arabia, whether it can handle the blockade by the Houthis, because if the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait is completely closed, the Saudis simply won't be able to export their oil at all. And we're talking about at least 4 to 4.5 million barrels per day. But this news alone, just the news itself, has already hit the market. It has also affected the Americans. The average price of gasoline in the United States of America has reached $4 per gallon. This is a direct consequence of the fact that the fighting is disrupting oil supplies through the Hormuz Strait. Oil on the global market is gradually approaching the mark of $90 per barrel. And here is the most important thing, why the situation is especially dangerous right now. The thing is, oil-consuming countries have already drawn down their strategic reserves to the lowest level in decades. And they have almost no margin of safety left to survive another closure of the Hormuz Strait. The US tried to create an alternative route bypassing the Iranian corridor, that is, along the coast of Oman. But the renewed fighting has effectively blocked this route as well, and now the Houthis are also blocking the exit from the Red Sea. In general, at this phase of the war, the situation with oil prices could become simply critical. That's why it's so critical. In the previous phase, yes, prices went up, but there were still reserves. But those reserves have run out. For Donald Trump, the rise in gasoline prices is also a domestic political problem, because expensive gasoline at American gas stations on the eve of the midterm congressional elections directly affects the Republicans' ratings. So, by closing the strait, Iran is fighting not only with missiles but also through gas prices in America. And this is an even bigger problem for Trump. Is there a chance for a new truce? Well, honestly, the situation looks very grim so far. A clear pattern, a strike, a retaliatory strike, a retaliation for the retaliation, and so on. Over these 10 days, it has just firmly taken root. There used to be hope for mediators. Delegations from Pakistan and Qatar would constantly travel to Tehran, trying to somehow save the truce, resume negotiations, and so on. But now, this activity from the Qataris and Pakistanis has been replaced by pessimism among virtually all regional diplomats. Even Qatar itself, which was a mediator, has come under attack twice during the latest escalation. And now the diplomatic track, as they put it in Qatar, is currently not functioning. At the same time, interestingly, Iran claims that communication with Washington through some diplomatic channels still remains. So, formally, the doors are not closed, but there are no real negotiations, and both sides are focused specifically on strikes, waiting to see who will give in first and who will blink first. But the problem is that despite massive American bombings, the war has still not led to the overthrow of the Iranian regime and has not resulted in the full opening of the Hormuz Strait. Yes, Iran's economy is in a difficult state, and its conventional armed forces have admittedly suffered heavy losses. But the Islamic Republic of Iran still has enough military power to deter commercial shipping from the Strait of Hormuz. And it does not intend to stop the attacks, at least at this stage. In summary, the United States of America has carried out massive airstrikes on Iran for the 10th consecutive night. This is a response to the death of 3 American soldiers in Jordan, the very red line Donald Trump had drawn. Iran is not backing down, striking at desalination plants, power stations, and even the air navigation systems of US allies, and continues to attack tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. President Pezeshkian of Iran has officially called this a full-scale war. And now the Houthis from Yemen have also declared a blockade of Saudi Arabia, putting a second strait in the region at risk. And according to regional mediators, diplomacy is practically dead. And here is the main question that many analysts are asking today. What exactly is Donald Trump trying to achieve? He still hasn't named a clear end goal. Again, what happened in the first phase of the war is repeating itself in the second. Either he wants to drive out Iranian soldiers and assets near the Strait of Hormuz, or, and this is the most worrying part, he is preparing the ground for something bigger, up to and including a ground operation. There is still no answer. Both sides are just escalating their strikes against each other. And the whole world is essentially being held hostage by this exchange, with rising gas prices, two straits already paralyzed, and the threat of a global energy shock. I'll leave it at that. Your opinions, your conclusions, write them in the comments under this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.